you, Dr. Bilmes, for uh, having time with us for this Multiolelo Podcast Series. So several quick questions for you. What motivated you to study meaning in talk?
Well, my my original interest that I tried to do my PhD on decision making is actually in the first chapter of Discourse and Behavior. You can sort of see this story. I did do my dissertation on decision making in a Thai village, but I was really struggling. I went through various kinds of psychological theories and at some point, I think, after I started reading Garfinkel and Sachs, I realized, the data that I had was, on the one hand, people made these decisions, and on the other hand, I talked to them about, what the factors were and so forth. And I didn't feel like I had any real handle on how they were making, decisions. But at some point, I realized that I had great data about how they talk about decisions. As a matter of fact, that was the data. It came to me, I guess, again, through my reading of Garfinkel and Sachs and some others, that the way that people talk about their decisions is not a trivial thing at all. It's in a way, it's just as important as how they make their decisions, except how they make their decisions tells you something about psychology, which I'm not qualified. I read some, but I'm really not qualified, and I don't think that psychologists have really worked it through either. But from an anthropological, sociological point of view, how they talk about decisions is quite crucial, because this is the stuff of social structure, social interaction, and it also is an expression of their theory of mind. And of course, our theories of mind are really important because that's how we relate to one another. So that's how I got from here to there, as it were. And also, I had some initial interests in symbolic logic and in ethnosemantics, the formal sorts of approaches to language. So that sort of coalesced at some point.
In terms of occasion semantics, would you mind giving us a brief description of that?
Okay, occasion semantics is, or has developed into anyway, the study of the structures of meaning that we discover in talk, and I want to underline that we discover them in the sense that I didn't come to this with the notion that I was going to, in this case, apply a taxonomic analysis or scaling to the data. I found that the people I was looking at, the talk I was looking at, actually developed taxonomical relations and structures of meaning in their talk. And that was what I was trying to get at. Now, probably my graduate training in ethnosemantics and taxonomical analysis in particular probably facilitated my getting where I did get with this. But it's important to understand, I think, it's easy to misunderstand what is going on with occasion semantics. I'm not eliciting taxonomies as you do with ethnosemantics, where you deliberately ask questions to elicit taxonomies. It's not that kind of formal analysis at all. The taxonomies that I find and the scales that I find in the talk that structure the talk, that structure the meaning in the talk, are they're they're there for that moment. I don't try to develop them or claim them as having some sort of cross-situational application. It's just a representation of the meanings that are being developed in that time and space, in connection with the what is occasion semantics. As I said, it consists pretty much at this point of the study of, first of all, taxonomical relations, and by that I mean co-categorization of things, how they go together, but also contrast, and both of which have, gotten attention from Harvey Sachs and from those who followed. But what is largely missing is hierarchical kinds of relationships. In Sachs's work, you have categories and then a sort of super category which categorizes the categories. So you have family members, and then you have son, daughter, and so forth at the next level down. But that's just a two-level thing. But really, taxonomical relations are multi-level, or at least can be, and frequently are. And so the degree of generalization, how far you're going to go in categorizing something, whether it's going to be very specific or very general, is a kind of decision that you make, and a lot hangs on that. By going more general in one way, you may lose information, but and people say, they talk about that. They say don't talk in vague generalities. But in other ways, the particular generality that you choose makes all the difference. Whether you categorize somebody as a father or as a soldier, for instance, says something about where you're going with this. And that's what Harvey Sachs was sensitive to.
So for those who are the first time hearing the term of occasion semantics, do you have a simple example for them?
There's one which I know you're familiar with because I know you read it. It's a reanalysis of a study that Harvey Sachs did on the situation is that a man has done something in relation to his wife, which caused his wife's sister to call the police, and now he's being interviewed subsequently by a social worker who is asking him what happened, and he says, I tried to, I didn't do anything, I tried to move her out of the way, right? And the social worker says, you slapped her one, didn't you? And the guy says, denies that he slapped her, and the social worker says, you're not telling the story. And this is what was of interest to Sachs, the fact that the social worker says that recognizes in some sense that you're not telling the story. And the guy answers by saying, well, by slap you mean hit. So the perpetrator, the storyteller, is also, in a sense, recognizing what is meant by saying you're not telling the story, that they're both on the same page. And he relates this to cultural knowledge about what it takes to call the police. But I was interested in particular in that utterance, by slap you mean hit, which it seems sort of odd because, well, yeah, I mean, of course that's what you mean by slap. Why would he say that? And at first it didn't seem like it had any particular meaning to it. It was just a thing that he said, but he was just denying again that he slapped her. But on further inspection, what he was doing when he says slap and hit, when he said by slap you mean hit, he's not saying that slap and hit are identical. What he's saying is something more like by poodle you mean dog. He's talking about a category of stuff.
Right.
So one thing that happens as a result when you start to look at it taxonomically is that he's not only now denying that he slapped her, he's denying that he hit her. So it would be inappropriate for the social worker then to say, oh, then did you punch her? That wouldn't work anymore because he's denied hitting her.
Right.
And the social worker instead says, oh, so you shoved her, is that it? Which the guy agrees to. And one of the things, aside from the fact that punching and maybe other forms of hitting are ruled out, is that he only generalizes to the point of going from slap to hit, rather than generalizing all the way to, I didn't do anything to her.
Right.
And because he doesn't, one can then ask, why didn't he go all the way with it? Why didn't he say, I didn't do anything, or I did tell you the whole story? And so what he's doing by slapping me and hit is in effect saying, guess again, but don't guess anything that counts as hitting.
Right.
Because if I didn't want you to guess again, if I would have denied it at a more general level. So he's inviting this. And then a final observation on this is that he's not simply, by admitting to shoving, he's not simply admitting to something which perhaps is less violent than hitting, although not always, by the way, you can shove somebody over a cliff. He is saying, okay, what you just said accords with what I told you to begin with, although in a way it's, I didn't tell you the whole story by saying I tried to move her. Shoving, if I shoved her, I should have said I shoved her, otherwise the implication is that I didn't do something that violent. But at least he didn't lie, and so this is more acceptable than slapping her hitting. So that's an example of the taxonomic side. I know we have a limited amount of time, so I'm not going to go into the scaling part of it. But basically, I started with a realization, with a sort of realization of taxonomy and an attention to generalization. And by the way, I view this all as development of Sachs's approach to categorization. I think I just took it another step. But in thinking about it, I realized that there was something missing if you're going to talk about the semantic skeleton of things. I realized that what was missing was scaling. That is, that there's the relationships are more or less, not just a matter of kind of or part of kinds of relationships, which is what taxonomies are about. So I added scaling to the conception of what occasion semantics is about. Now, I don't think that I necessarily now have something which is complete. I think this remains to be developed further in whatever directions people want to take it. But this is what seemed to me, at least initially, to be the basic structures of semantic meaning in talk. Now, of course, there's all sorts of other things going on. There's causality and so forth. But I'm just trying to get at the sort of what do things mean? What do expressions mean? And more crucially, in terms of occasion semantics, how are those meanings related to one another? And of course, you can trace this all the way back to Saussure, who says that meanings are developed in relation to one another in language. So, in a sense, if I'm talking about what I'm building on, I'm not only building on Sachs, I'm building on Saussure as well, and on many others.
So a recent amazing work that you have your colleagues have been doing is regrading.
Regrading has and scaling in general has been the thing that so far most people have latched on to, and there's a special edition, a special issue of the Journal of Pragmatics, which is pretty much, except with the exception of one paper out of the 7 plus the introduction, there's just one paper which is not University of Hawaii associated. All the rest are by University of Hawaii former students, in one case a current student, and there's a paper by me. So it's really pretty much a University of Hawaii production,
Right.
which I'm proud of. I think that it helps to put the University of Hawaii graduate program in conversation analysis related kinds of stuff on the map, as does a couple of other productions by Gabby, largely under the guidance of Gabby Casper.
So what does regrading mean?
Oh, regrading is just upgrading and downgrading. It's just the cover term for both. Interestingly, it shows how we've used that term. You can find hundreds of examples in conversation analysis where people talk about upgrading and downgrading, as well as in linguistics and linguistic pragmatics. It's very, very common, but it's interesting, I think, that we don't seem to have a term that means, that covers both upgrading and downgrading, because sometimes it's more useful to just talk about regrading, where you're talking about something could be upgraded or downgraded, whichever. So as far as I know, I coined that term, although I would imagine, there's really nothing new under the sun. I would imagine at some point somebody else used it as well. But in CA, conversation analysis, I can't speak for other fields as well, but in CA, I don't think I've ever seen any cover term for upgrading and downgrading, even though people talk about upgrading and downgrading all the time.
Right. So what do you think is important to study occasion semantics and scaling?
Basically, you're asking me, why is it important to study the structure of meaning in talk? Because that's what occasion semantics is about. And my first reply would be that I don't agonize over that. One of the advantages of being a sort of privileged academic is that one doesn't have to necessarily worry about the kind of usefulness of what you're doing. If it is deemed intellectually important and engaging, that's a reason for doing it. And certainly, the study of meaning has been something which philosophers and linguists and social scientists in general have all considered absolutely central to understanding human behavior. I mean, yes, I could work on there is such a thing, for instance, as applied CA, and I suppose there could be such a thing as applied occasion semantics, but it's I leave that for somebody else to develop. I'm not engaged with the applied side of the thing. I think that is ultimately one can simply say, well, this is a well-established kind of endeavor, intellectual endeavor. This is just one part of that.
So, in addition to the intellectual engagement, what have you benefited from studying occasion semantics or meaning in talk?
How have I benefited from
Yeah, personally or academically,
Well,
in any case.
The way that I've benefited from it is by having students like you guys, and who take some interest in it, and occasionally I publish about it. And no, can't say that anybody else has benefited from it, although I guess students occasionally show interest in it. But that's it. I don't get any material benefits from it. Other than that, it's a way of doing my job. But since I'm retired, I don't even get that.
Well, looking forward to our future publications. Thank you, Dr. Bilmes. Mahalo.
You're welcome. Thank you for attending to me.
Thank you.